we're live. Just made it right at 7 o'clock. Nailed it right on the button. So tonight we are going to talk about, obviously, excuse me, hands are cold. The video that I just put up where I ran the water methanol kit, the snow performance piece that I've run over and over again. I've had that thing for years and years, and we pull it out every so often, dust it off, and rerun it. Luckily for me, those guys sent us a bunch of different nozzles. And the cool thing is that makes for a lot of adjustability, basically. And that's what I wanted to kind of cover in this. Really, the test that I ran today. So if you guys haven't taken a look at the video, make sure that you do. That video is up. And what I did was compare the boost juice that Snow Performance sells, and we compared that to the two different, we only got two different kinds of the windshield washer fluid, which a lot of guys get, and they try to replace the boost juice or some sort of pre-mix deal that they do on water and methanol. And I got a lot of comments on that. Hey, you should mix your own and different ratios and stuff. But what I wanted to do is the common ones that people use, which Snow Performance sells the boost juice. And then there are the other two kinds of fairly common windshield washer fluid. One of them that we have here in California, which is the 32-degree stuff, which, because I think that they assume that we don't have cold weather and it doesn't get below freezing. But we have the Sierras here. We have mountains, and it gets very cold and it snows and it gets well below freezing. We also have Death Valley, which is the hottest place, one of the hottest places in the world. So they have big diversity here, which is kind of awesome. But we ran that, which has very little alcohol content because that's what they're using to stop it from freezing. And in this case, they're probably not. But we also use the -20 stuff. And we just happen to have some of that at Westech. I don't even know where we got that from. Maybe from one of the trucking places or something. And that one will have more alcohol content. I didn't check. They didn't list on there what the percentages were. Maybe we could look that up and find out. But I was more interested in not doing an actual chemistry experiment where I mixed them myself. I wanted to do what the average guy does, because that's when I go to the wrecking yard, I get stuff and put it on the dyno and run average guy stuff. I don't make my own things very often, and that's not what I wanted this test to be. I wanted it to be a comparison between the regular everyday stuff that a guy would go get and the thing that he could buy that costs more. So we're looking, it's more of a test on the low buck option, which is what we did. So the question was, either one of the windshield washer fluids, are they a viable low buck option to run instead of the boost juice stuff, which I think is going to be more money. There are probably other ways. I'm sure guys will mention in the comments that there are other ways to do these things and mix it yourself, at a less expensive rate. And that's good. And we want to hear about that, because that would be definitely a way to go. But if a guy just went and bought those, what would happen? And the interesting thing that we saw in the testing, the thing that I liked is because it answered a lot of questions that I wanted to know, that I've seen out there before that guys had asked. One of them is a lot of guys will just put the water methanol injection on because they're either not running an intercooler a lot of times, and they'll run that instead because it's hard sometimes just from a packaging standpoint to fit in intercooler places, and they can't package it. So they'll run water meth instead of that. So the question is, when you put that on, do you have to retune it? And the answer is yes. And not surprisingly so, the more water meth that we add, and especially in this case, it's mostly the methanol, the more of that we add, because we saw that with one of the things I didn't go over because I didn't want the video to be 3 hours long, because there's a lot of data there. But one thing I didn't show is how much extra tuning was necessary with each one of the systems. So, I showed you the change in air fuel in the video of what happened when we added the Snow Performance stuff. We just put the number 6 nozzle in there. I put we put an injection start time and a maximum time. So where the system was all in, and it creates a little scaled graph there. And what we showed was when we injected that amount and got a fairly sizable gain or a sizable drop in charge temperature, went from 192 down to 110 or so, that we had a big change in air fuel. So it richened the motor up quite a bit. So we had to lean it back out to get the air fuel back even to what it was when there was no water meth injected. And not surprisingly, the more methanol that we injected, the more we had to adjust that, because the water portion of it, or the other things that are in, especially the windshield washer fluid, don't affect the air-fill ratio. So the things that, I didn't show exactly how much we had to adjust each one of those, but it was varying amounts basically based on the content of each one of those. We adjusted them all back so that they were in the 11.8, 11.9 to 1 air-fuel ratio. And I tried playing with timing a little bit, didn't seem to be responsive. A lot of guys commented the fact that I shouldn't have run this on the 85. I did that because I wanted the motor to be safe. What I wanted to find out is, and I wanted to find out exactly what this thing showed. I wanted to show if there was a power difference. I want to show three things, and we showed them in this video. I wanted to show, is there a big change in the tuning necessary when you put water methanol injection on your car? A lot of guys use it. I've seen a lot of guys just put it on, and they tune it based on what they're doing with the water methanol. Well, all that's great, but the more methanol that you put on, the more it's going to richen up the mixture. So when we just put the water methanol with a number 6 nozzle in the Snow Performance Boost Cooler stuff, our air-fill ratio is down in the 10s, and it just killed power. I mean, it killed power by a lot. It was 40 or 50 horsepower. So you're going to drop a ton. And as a percentage standpoint on this little V6, 30, 40, 50 horsepower is a lot. It's a big percentage of what was there. So you definitely feel it. On an 800 horsepower motor, if you hurt 30 or 40 horsepower, whatever, you wouldn't notice it as much. But when it's 10 or 15% of the total, it's quite a bit. So you definitely need to retune this thing after you put water methanol on there. And the more that you add, the more that you need to retune it, which is one of the things that scares me about water methanol, is because if you run out of it, unless you have some countermeasures set up to take away timing or add fuel or something, if you run out of the water methanol, all of a sudden your motor, especially under boost, is going to be running really, really lean by as much as, and what we saw here, as much as a full air fuel point. So where you were safe at 11.5 or 11.8, if you had a, kind of a spicy tune in there, now you're going to be at 12.8. 12.8 under boost for any period of time is probably definitely going to hurt something. So that's one of the things I don't like about it. Obviously, you need to make sure that your system is always full, and you have some, like I said, some sort of countermeasure to stop anything from happening. If and when you do run out, you have, they have low level warning lights and, all kinds of different things, but you want to make sure that you always have that. And I know, because that happened to us, it happened to me. When I say us, I mean me. Because I didn't have I couldn't find the reservoir that has the fitting in the bottom to plug the line into it. When I was running it, all I did was just drill a hole in the cap of the 1 gallon boost cooler jug and just shove the plastic line down in there. Well, I didn't put it in there far enough, and we started using up the thing during testing, and we got to a point where the end of the tube became uncovered. Well, when that happens, there's no more water methanol. Lucky for us, we have a Lambda meter that shows exactly what's happening. And as the thing goes from 11.8 or 11.9, when it starts going into the 12s, I'm like, oh, okay, well, we're getting off there. And if you do it like that, if you come off the throttle right away when things start to lean out, it's not going to hurt itself, especially from a lean mixture. It's not going to hurt itself in that short period of time, and you can come off of the throttle. If you have too much timing, you can hurt it that quickly. Things can get bad really fast. The interesting thing is that the injection of the water meth, the boost cooler stuff, and both forms of the windshield washer fluid had a dramatic effect on charge temperature. They both lowered it the same way. And the other thing that I didn't cover in the video is that when I was doing the testing, how quickly you make the runs and the number of runs that you did in a row affect the starting temperature of the charge temperature, and that affects the end temperature, because you're going to have a rise of 50, 60 degrees or whatever during the pull, because the pull is structured. It's 300 RPM per second. We're starting at 2,900 RPM and ending at 6,000 or higher, depending on when we eventually, you'll see in the next video when we put a cam in it and stuff. So all of that's fixed. But if just like if you start with a higher water temperature or a lower water temperature, higher oil temperature or a lower oil temperature, things are different from from the starting point, and then things are going to be different from the end. So the same thing with charge temperature. If we do a run and then do another run right away without allowing things to cool off, you're going to see, like I said, instead of it starting at 120 degrees, you may start out now at 130 or 134 degrees or 5 or whatever. And then so now it's going to gain 60 horsepower, and it's going to be higher on the start and higher at the end. And so in some of these tests, you have to watch some of that stuff when you're doing it, because you might, when I'm showing you guys the graph and I show you, oh, hey, look, this did this, and then I try to explain it away, you're like, oh no, the boost cooler was a lot hotter. Well, it's not. It's only on that run, because that was one that happened, during a succession of runs that was 3 or 4 long while we were doing the tuning. And then on the end one, when we finally finalized it, that we were starting with a higher temperature and ending with a higher temperature. So all of this stuff happens while you're doing this testing, and you have to be mindful of that. It's very important, especially if you're, like you guys are looking for like hard data, and you want the starting points and you want the ending points. So all of that stuff happened. I was really excited about the results of this test, and I like the fact that I showed how much of a change there was in the air fuel mixture. And we showed it I even did it with different nozzle sizes, and I didn't show all of this in the video, but I ran a number 2 nozzle and a 3 nozzle, and I don't know if we ran a 4. I know we ran a 5, and know we ran a 6. And then I also did testing with different onset points and different ending points. And if you ramp the thing in really fast, like you can have it, this thing ran basically from about 8 pounds on our load in, and then it went to 14.8 pounds with the 3.2 pulley and the stock camshaft. That was the range of boost that it ran during the run. So you can have if you wanted, what I was doing is I was playing with having the onset be right after the load in, like say 9 pounds, and then full injection at 14 pounds, which is up near the top. You could also, and what I probably would do if I was out on the street, I might have the onset point be 3 pounds. So as soon as you're rolling into the throttle and getting into boost, you're having some injection. And then I would play with where I want how I want that thing kind of ramped in. Maybe put the max injection point higher or lower, however you see that thing working out. And then remember, whatever you do, you're going to have to tune that. But there is some combination that's going to give you the best charge temperature. And this is especially important with, because we were running on E85. So we already knew that the timing that we had and the airfield that we have were safe even without the water meth injection, because we'd already run that. But I wanted to see what each one of these did in terms of power. Now, I see a lot of comments because I've been reading them, and I always go through the comments because I like to hear what the people are saying, and I like to interact with everybody. And I want them to know that they're not just watching my video and me not caring about any of this. I go and read all of the comments. And so there's a lot of comments about a couple of things. One is they want to see not E85 used as the base fuel. They want to see 91. The problem with using 91 is that there's much less of a safety margin doing that. The test that I want to do with 91 with regards to water meth injection is I want to see if water meth injection and 91 can make the same power as just E85. I don't think that it can, but I'd like to test that and see, and I want to find out. I would probably use boost juice for that, just because I think it showed that it makes the most power, at least of the 3 things I tested. The other thing that I would kind of like to try is, and let me know what you guys think, I would like to find out if 100% methanol is going to be even better. Some guys suggested just run E85 in the water meth, in the container, and try that. There are lots of things, obviously, that we and that would be interesting to see if we actually saw some power gains by doing that, because at least my connection's unstable. Hopefully I'm back. Am I back? Can you guys see me? So hopefully that would, because it's a fuel, it will add power. That's what I'm hoping. I haven't done a lot of testing with methanol, and I'd like to try that and see what happens, but we'll see. That will be another test that we will try. A lot of guys had suggested also nitrous oxide, which I've run before, and I'm going to run nitrous on the 3800 with the blower, not because we're going to do charge cooling with it, because I already know what that's going to do. The thing that will help us with charge cooling on the 3800, if we run nitrous on it, that didn't show when I ran the turbo deal, is the percentage of nitrous that we'd be using relative to the test power output is going to be much higher. So if we had like a 75 shot or 100 shot or something worth of nitrous, it's going to be, 25% or more of what the original power output was. When we added 100 shot on the turbo motor, we were already at like 800 horsepower. So we didn't get a lot of charge cooling. I think it only dropped the charge temperature by about 30 degrees. We may see a bigger change in charge temperature with a wet fogger setup, mounted before the throttle body, run on this smaller motor that's making less power. So that will be interesting. But ultimately, what I need to get to now with the 3800, I want to do the ported heads, definitely. I now have a blower that has the ZZP 4-inch pulley on that, and you're going to see that coming up in the next video. The next video is camshaft and that 3-inch pulley, and obviously, as you might imagine, good things happen with both of those. But ultimately, what we need to start getting into is the turbo stuff. So I want to run the ported heads. I want to run a bigger camshaft, and I want to run the NA intake manifolds. And I have somebody hopefully sending me the inserts for those manifolds so we can change the runner length and show people what those things do. And we can compare it to the hogged out blower housing on the stock manifold and see how all of that works out. And then eventually, I'm hoping that we can get to, and this is going to be my question for you guys for tonight, we're going to get to the point where I need to do a big bang on this. So should I do it on this L67, or should I wait and go out and try to find another L32 to get the theoretically stronger short block, because maybe that one will take more power? Everyone's going to say do both because that's what everybody says. So let me know what you guys think. So I want to hear what you guys have to say about the water meth stuff. Let me know what you guys think. Some more testing should be done. And yeah, Tom, I'm back. I'm excited about your test too, Tom, about running that blower, that low buck blower on there on the LS. That's going to be fun. Did you pick up boost spraying the water meth? No, it actually theoretically should lower boost if it lowers the temperature. And that's what I would expect to happen. And that's what did kind of happen, although the difference in boost pressure wasn't consistent with the drop in charge temperature. For instance, the Snow Performance one, the boost pressure was a little bit higher. And on the other ones, it was a little bit lower. And on the no water methanol, the boost pressure was kind of in between. Now, I don't know if that's an anomaly with the way that we're recording it, or if one of the systems, like the Snow deal that the particular test that we're measuring, did it fill that in with water and meth and cause the boost to go up? I don't know. I don't have an answer for it, because theoretically, if you lower the temperature, it should lower the boost. I just don't know how much that is. What I wanted to see ideally is whenever we drop the charge temperature from 190 degrees to 110 degrees, I wanted to see that was, okay, that's consistently 0.3 of a pound or 0.4 of a pound or whatever, 0.2 of a pound, whatever the number is. I wanted to see it consistently be that, except it wasn't. It's unfortunate. Let's see. DJ Lamp. Yes, do the big bang on the L67. The strength between the two isn't worth the argument. Okay. You think that the GT45 is enough to blow it up? It's not. That's not going to be enough. It'll make I feel confident that it will make way more than 750 horsepower. Walmart brand purple -25 is 25 to 30% methanol. Okay, this was -20, and I don't remember who's. I think it might have been Peak. Let's see what it's got. I've seen broken Grand National cranks. We won't break a crank. I mean, normally what happens on these big bang motors is we'll break a rod or a piston. Where is the best place to run a meth nozzle on boosted setup? Normally, I run them in the discharge tube before the throttle body. I don't usually run them before. If you have an air-to-water intercooler 2, I don't run them before the intercooler. I run them after. David, okay, did I send you the address? I can get the intake manifolds from the wrecking yard. That's not a problem. If you have the inserts, that would be cool. Oh, Admiral, it was Peak. I thought it was. Would you run water methanol instead of an intercooler? I'm an intercooler person. I'm not a water meth person. I would rather run an intercooler. But like I said, on this particular instance with a Roots blower, it needs some kind of cooling because they're not very efficient at high boost levels. And I don't have an air to water intercooler, which I'd like to have on that. Ideally, it's time to take the blower off and put an intercooler where it's supposed to go and a turbo and blow through that. Do I have any 70 millimeter turbos? I don't think so. The GT45 is a 69 millimeter, I think. Let's see. Jerry, I understand it's less safe if there's a problem, but isn't the whole point of water meth injection to allow you to run pump gas? A lot of people do that. Yeah, and that's what they do. They run 91 and then they put water meth on it. But an intercooler will do the same thing. Although it'd be interesting to see. I wish we had a way to measure. I wish we had knock sensors on it so that we could find out if the anti-detonate properties of water meth injection also make it so that you can run more boost and or more timing than you can with simply an intercooler and 91. I think water meth and 91 might be a better combination, allow you, assuming that it went the same to all the cylinders, might actually allow you to run more than the intercooler does. Whenever I do the testing, the intercooler always makes more power, but that doesn't, we always run good gas in, so that doesn't tell you what the detonation threshold is. I got $50 on a ringland failure. We're definitely going to put more ring gap in it. If you cool the charge before compressing it, it shouldn't lower boost pressure. Well, we injected the water meth before the blower, but we're taking our pressure and our temperature readings after the blower. No, no address yet. Well, I'm not, David, I haven't sent you the address. I'll have to get that. Problem with the intercooler on an LX, there's no room in the front and you have to hack it up. Yeah, that's probably true. James, we've already run a turbo on the L32, just not on the L67 yet, but that's coming. I thought that Series 3 would make 900 foot-pounds before Benthrop. 900 foot-pounds would be a lot. But the but the Series 3 has the Gen 4 meaty rods. Nice. I know, Mike, we can buy an intercooler for it. If I had intercooler kind of money, I would do that. Yeah, Tom, probably gets cold out there. We don't get many negative 40 days here. Roscoe getting a Boss 302 on December 2nd. So is it a like a 1969 or 1970 Boss 302, or is it the modern Boss 302? The Paul wants to know the water meth will increase octane. He wants to know if the water meth will increase octane too. The methanol portion of it does. Yeah, the water doesn't have an effect on that. Cheap intentions. I'm running a GT45 on my L83. Okay, that's a good combination. With the throttle body, water, meth plate. Okay, so it's behind the throttle body. Temps do get up to 160, but I can't log inside after the injection. DJ Lamp, if the GT45 is 69 millimeter, that should take you a little ways. My appreciation is 6870 has taken me to 680 wheel horsepower, 24 pounds. I know I still have headroom for 32 pounds. I don't know about that particular turbo. The GT45 on the LS seems to be about an 800 horsepower turbo. On a smaller motor, it seems to work fairly well. Otherwise, the exhaust back pressure gets fairly high. I think it can do that on the 3800. The Snow Performance says their boost juice ups octane to something over 100. It would depend on how much of it's being injected relative to the octane of the other fuel that you're using as a percentage, because that's the way that you calculate it. James, I had buddies that ran the ZZP intercoolers on their L67. Their inlet air temperatures were still kind of high. I haven't looked at those close up, so I don't know how thick they are. I don't know how they flow. I don't know what the heat rejection is. I don't know how efficient they are. I haven't seen anything about them, I don't think. I thought that I ran one like 10 years ago, or no, it's more than that. It was back in 2001 or so. So 20 years ago. I thought that we ran some kind of intercooler on the first 3800 that I did way back at West Tech. Let's see. I've got a 7875 T51R for Black Friday. Thanks. Oh, cool. I have a number of turbos that I can run. I have the GT45. I have from the guys from Max Speeding, which I have another GT45, I think, from them, which is what I'm going to try to run. I'll probably run their turbo on it. I also have a 3076, a pair of those. I also have a 3582, a pair of those. I have a pair of S475s that are T4s. I have, I can borrow Freiberger's S480, I'm sure. I have the T6 S475 from Summit. I think I also have one of the original T76s, which I don't remember what size impeller that is, from the guys at CX Racing. So I have a variety of different turbos I can run, and they're all, reasonably common ones. Les, who do you want to read the comments? Turbo blower deal. Sebastian Lapointe, do you have a chassis dyno? West Tech has a chassis dyno. They have a super flow. Karen, and an LST4 log turbo manifold from FP Turbo is on sale right now for $200. So you're gonna have a good combination there. Burning tires, I may have missed it, but on the boost juice tested the boost curve change with a change in air temperature. I was just talking about that earlier. It didn't change consistently. James, Richard, the L32 had the turbo blowing through the blower. Yes, the turbo was blowing through the supercharger. I would never like those setups. You don't like the compound setups on the L67? Mike said that's a Fast and Furious build, supercharged turbo and nitrous. I forgot the nitrous on that. I needed to add that. Then it would be all like Pro Street. John's in the house. Daniel wants E85 with 2 methanol, 210-pound injectors in the charge pipe. The video was frozen earlier. Sebastian wants to know, can too cold of a charge temp hurt the rotating assembly? In -40. If the motor's already up to temperature, you can't get the charge temperature cold enough. A negative charge temperature will make amazing power if you can do that. Mike wants to know why I didn't spray a little nitrous on a supercharged turbo deal. It doesn't need that on the supercharger and the turbo. It would have just been icing on the cake. I will run nitrous on the blower deal though. Casey wants to know, does an Edelbrock carb fit a spread bore manifold? Some of the Edelbrock carbs are a direct fit for the Quadrajet, but others are not. Some of the Edelbrock carburetors are more like a Carter. Roscoe, oh, I wish it was a 69 or 70. Yeah, I like those cars a lot. It'd be a 2012 Boss 302, also a good car. Leave it stock or turbo. Roscoe, just drive it around for right now. See how you like it, and then after a while, you'll think, man, I really like this car. If it only had 100 or 200 or 300 more horsepower, then you get to decide which one of those you want to put on. Eric Wilson, how well do knock sensors work for detecting pre-ignition? So you're talking about detonation that happens before the ignition cycle, before the actual timed ignition. They will sense any like detonation. Admiral wants to know, I'm getting a trick flow intake manifold, a street burner, thoughts on ceramic power coating. So you're going to, if you coat the intake manifold, the theory is that you keep all the heat inside the manifold. I like the way they look, so I would do it anyway. And I like the black painted or powder coated or whatever they're doing to those manifolds. I like those. I think that they look good. Would the injector make most of frozen fuel snow at -40? I don't know I don't understand the question. So if you want, are you trying to get the transfer medium down to -40 degrees? I don't know how you do that. How are you going to get it that cold? John wants to know, how much power will an LM7 board 20 over with forged internals hold? Well, a stock one can go to 1500, a stock bottom end. So if you need more than that, it's a lot. Sebastian, I don't think just mist is going to get you into -40 degrees. You're thinking of a power adder for your LS 6-liter, thinking of a bottle. Yeah, nitrous is a good option and easy to install. I can always add a turbo. Or, yeah, you can add a turbo later on with nitrous. Evan wants to know, did it not make any power gains or like any more timing because it already is maxed out? I think so. I'm actually surprised that it only wanted like 21 degrees of timing with no water meth or anything. I'm surprised even with just E85 that it didn't want more timing than 21 degrees. We tried 22 and it didn't really seem to gain anything. In fact, going from 20 to 21, it gained very little. So I'm surprised at that timing level. And I'm surprised that it didn't gain anymore. When we lower the charge temperature dramatically, I thought, okay, now it should want more timing or respond to more timing, and it didn't. And it is probably because it's on the 85. Now, what guys want me to do is they want me to do the test on 91, where we're going to reduce the timing a lot and take the thing out of its efficiency range, and then all of a sudden put it back in its efficiency range because we have the water meth. they want to show big gain. People want to show big gains from a water meth kit. The water meth kit by itself is not going to add power. I've never seen it add power all by itself. I've seen it add power because you add boost, because you add timing, those kinds of things. And more so with 91, because you're limited in 91. You're limited in the amount of timing that you can run. You're limited in the amount of boost that you can run because of the detonation threshold. If you then move the detonation threshold and you can add more of those things, then you get more power. But a lot of guys think that just adding water meth, spraying that in there, does what nitrous does. It adds lots of power, and that's not the case. Jason, Richard, did you ever figure out what was going on with the 6-liter and the Cadillac blower? I'm pretty sure that it was belt slippage. And I'm not going to run that again because I've got to send it out to somebody else. DJ Lamp, ZGP intercores are made from automotive heater cores. The older styles are 2.5 and 3 inches thick. The newer ones are 2.25. They do not have the best flow characteristics. They do work. T, no 2.2. I haven't done any 2.2 testing yet. That motor's not finished yet. Jerry, and this is many people ask this question too. I wonder how much cooling you'd get injecting water only without the methanol, so you wouldn't have to change the tune. Just water injection, and Spirco used to sell water injection back in the day when we had high compression and people were putting it on NA motors and for turbo motors too. You can lower the charge temperature with just water, and it probably would help, and you would not have to change the tune. So that might be another test that I could run just with water and see what the change in charge temperature is, and then there should be no change in air fuel, but we'll be able to register that and see. Admiral, we have a chassis down on next street over. Going to test AMSOIL versus Castrol diff fluid. You're going to do a diff fluid test. That's going to be really hard to show a difference. James wants to know what were the inlet air temps when you compounded the L32. I don't know if I have the inlet air temps when we did that. I'll have to check and see. Yeah, you could run compressed CO2 sprayed on the blower case. That will chill the outside of the blower case, certainly. What that's going to do, though, is change the it's going to change the clearances between the case and the rotors. What if we spray nitrous? Nitrous is more than, it's colder than -40. It's a -129. The problem is, like we showed with the turbo deal, is you can't get enough nitrous into it to make the rest of the charge temperature -129. Then it would just be all nitrous. Big things will happen with the power and probably blowing the motor up too to get the charge temperature that low. Otherwise, it's mixing with a very small percentage of nitrous and a big percentage of the hot air. And so you don't ever get it down that low. Yeah, water meth can add, or anything, meth, nitrous, whatever, can add power on diesel applications since they're throttled by fuel. So if you add more fuel, they'll make more power. Can you tell us what, right turn, Randy, can you tell us what internals were in the Gladiator engine? I don't remember which ones were in the original Gladiator. The one that the new one, the Gladiator 2, is a Dart SHP short block. With a nitrous plate, do you need to increase the fuel pressure like a carburetor? Mackenzie wants to know. Well, when we run nitrous as a plate system on almost anything, we normally take fuel pressure away. We have a separate system on the dyno that feeds the nitrous plate that is not shared with the two lines that we have feeding the carburetor. So we'll run, let's say 7 pounds or whatever feeding the carburetor, but we normally run 6 pounds or less feeding the nitrous plate. Otherwise, normally the way that they send them and the jetting that they recommend tends to be a little on the rich side to make it safe. We usually have to take fuel away from it when we run it. One bad AMX. How much horsepower did your 5.9 turbo make? If you're asking me, I haven't ever run boost on a 5.9 liter Dodge motor yet. I will. When you run a turbo, yes, you will have to. You're going to have to boost reference the regulator to the nitrous. Tom wants to know, I heard that if you use nitrous too early, it can blow the welds on the intake. Yes, it definitely can. Les, there were lots of questions before you started reading. First part of every live is me talking about whatever subject we're talking about, and then I go to questions. So if you have questions, you can go ahead and ask them. Brody, on my Fiat 500 Abarth that made power on the stock tune, the ECU does close loop fuel and boost, but boost and timing were the same. My guess is the oxygenation improved power. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you talking about adding a water mesh setup? If you added a water mesh setup to a turbo car, something else changed. You're not getting power from the water mesh system. Have you ever had a liquid propane injection? I have not. I've only ever run one. We started one motor up on propane. That was a 4200. Can you please get more Gen 2 LT1 content? I plan on it. So let's go down to the bottom here and see what we're doing. Yeah, Mike said that the non-intercooled T-type guys, which are the Grand National guys before the Grand before the Grand National, before it was an intercooled deal, they would buy this no performance kit. Water methanol is would be good for something like that, or they should be able to put an intercooler on it too. The Gen 2, Gregory, the Glenn, he said that he's glad it's not the only Gen 2, and it did very well. I wonder what's going on. Come on, people. Drunken Bandit, did you measure EGTs? I did not have an EGT probe hooked up. I probably should have, though. It would have been good information to see if it changed, if lowering the charge temperature. It should lower the EGT also. because the timing stayed the same. And once we got the air fuel the same and we had a drop in inlet air temperature, it should lower the EGT as well. Any idea when you plan on doing the Turbo 5.9 Magnum? Yeah, when I get down there and do the Magnum, I have to switch everything around. And hopefully the next time I put it on the dyno, we're going to run a few tests with it. I want to get a decent cam in it, and I need to do a few other tests too before we do that, before we run boost on it. But it's going to do what all turbo motors do. It's going to do whatever the NA thing is, whatever the power curve looks like at that NA combination that we happen to run, and then it's just going to elevate all that. All engines do that. Sebastian, is there an aluminum block that is best to overbore? Yes, if you're going to bore one of them, you do it with a 5.3. 5.3. An L33 or an LC9 block is the one that you want. All of the other ones have a limit to how much you can bore them, like the LS1, the LS2, the LS3. I don't, DJ Lamp, I don't have the other cams yet, so I just need to pick one. I do want to get a 230-ish cam, but I also want to get a 220 cam to run in between to show. I want to show what happens with a 210, a 220, and a 230 kind of thing to show people that would be thinking about running these cams in their street or supercharged motors that you're going to get. We're already seeing a little bit of a trade-off when you guys will see the cam test coming up on the L67 and what happened to power and what happened to boost. And you'll see that there's already, even with a 210, 220 cam, which is pretty small, we're starting to see a trade-off. It has a fairly wide LSA. It's 115, because it's a blower cam. I think if we had a tighter LSA on that, which you certainly could with that duration spread, if we tighten up the LSA, I think we'd have less of a loss down low. And it's not a loss; it's a little bit of a loss down below 3,500, if I remember right. I'll getting that video. You guys will see that tomorrow. Mike, why didn't the 3800 make more power with the 70-degree inlet air temperature reduction and identical AFR? Because it didn't. That's why we test. Any chance the water? Barton wants to know, any chance the water meth was fouling the O2 sensor and messed with the AFR numbers? Not sure how much the big nozzle was pushing through the motor. No, because it repeats when we don't run the water meth. After that, it repeats perfectly. So the sensor is fine. Yeah, propane is basically nitrous on a diesel. Almost any kind of fuel that you add to a diesel is fuel. Matt, excuse me, man. I'm surprised the Olds Jetfire and the turbo jet fluid water meth and fully mechanical low fuel level boost cut hasn't been brought up. It was an early setup in that, and they had to figure out a way to circumvent, to detune the thing when it didn't have the water meth injection. And if I remember right, I think that they are also using the boost. Were they using the boost to pressurize the fluid delivery or something? Richard, did you finally watch the boosted 408 video from Power Nation? No, I have not. I need to. Burning tires. What if you ran an E85 in the snow kit instead of boost juice? What would it do to inlet air temperatures? It would still probably bring it down. I would like to see that, and a lot of people have suggested that. That's a fuel, and it's partly a fuel, I guess. And running pure meth also is the same thing that people are suggesting, pure methanol. Admiral, so Richard, the O3 Cobras have the same pistons as the other early 4.6 Cobra motors. Did they just have manly rods? Did they not have forged pistons? Just with a deeper dish, so we know regular 4.6 pistons with ring gap will make 800 reliably and over 1,000 on track day. We know that the O3 Cobra will make way over 1,000. We've done that. That N20F body, would running E85 help a nitrous setup with horsepower numbers at all? Only if the nitrous, only if the E85 help the NA number, but we haven't seen that a lot. You might be, if you're running 91 and you're running nitrous and you run E85, you might be able to get away with another degree or two of timing. Can always cool the charge with nitrous. Again, nitrous doesn't really cool the charge very much because there's just never enough of it. Richard, have you ever seen a Fox Jesse Mustang with a 4.6 mod motor from the factory? They didn't come from the factory that way. They did put mod motors in some of them, but I don't remember if they were Fox ones or if they were the SN95s. They used them to run around with to do testing with the motors. Sanchez might know about that. Neil, E85 in a snow kit would make it run rich, but which is exactly what we saw with the water meth as well. It richened up the mixture a lot, more than a full airfill point. Richard, I have my 60 what a sloppy stage 2 can tomorrow. I want to buy an 88 turbo. I'd like to cruise around 600 horsepower on the track, take it to 1,000. Should I choose a 4 or 5 inch exhaust? You can run 1,000 horsepower with a 4 inch exhaust if that fits better. Jeremy, you need to run as big of an exhaust as you can on your turbo, whatever will fit. Tim, maybe do a test adding heat from the yellow bottles to up the methanol content. Well, I think that the test to up the methanol content of the -20 windshield washer fluid, I think the test would be to run pure methanol, and then we could extrapolate from there to anywhere in between what the percentages would be. I did not check the Fleming wants to know, did you look into the meth content in washer fluid? I don't know what it is on these two that we tested. Maury, the 2.2 guys used to run Euro cold start injectors for high boost. That was done a lot too early on. Running a snow kit on E85 is basically the same thing. Richard, are you interested in doing a stock stamped versus lightweight versus roller tip rocker on a 3800? I do have a spare set of fancy T&D adjustable roller rockers on the shelf. The thing already has a roller fulcrum on it, so is it just a roller tip? I doubt we see anything from a roller tip. I would be interested in doing that. Everybody wants me to do the 1.9 rocker ratio change, which should see a change in power. I would do that obviously with a stock cam. Neil, what do you think of the new G series turbos? I actually haven't looked into that at all for small capacity road cars, Honda 4-cylinders, T25 frame size, but climbing up to 660 horsepower. That's a lot from a T25 frame. Fascist is telling us that the peak minus 20 is 33% ethanol. So if we went to 100% and got some kind of change, then we could extrapolate between 33 and 100%, assuming that the other stuff that's in the peak isn't hindering, like isn't suppressing combustion. Burning tire. This is a good question. If you ran pure methanol, would you target the same air fuel? We would target the same air fuel on the Lambda scale, but I need to talk to Brule about that to figure out what, because we're running multiple fuels and they're different. And like we can, the Lambda meter will work on E85 and it will give us an 11.8. You know, it knows the different fuel, but it's not going to be able to calculate two different fuels, I don't think. So it'll be interesting. Have you ever caused a misfire from too much water meth? I have not. So Mustang Garage is saying minus 20 washer fluid is 20%. Will a 2V computer run a 3V with lockouts for a daily driver? I have no idea about the factory ECUs or wiring harnesses and stuff. Joseph, could you eliminate intercooler with water meth and maintain horsepower? In the testing that I've done, water meth doesn't make as much power as the intercooler does, and doesn't have as low a charge temperature either. Casey, are those all 5-liter chassis? Or are they 5-liter Mustangs? If they are, let me know if they want to sell one. Neil, Lambda would have to be calculated on the percentage of both fuels and adjusted for the higher density of the cooler burn temp of the methanol. What we would get is a percentage of methanol and then the percentage of the other fuel that we'd be using, E85 or whatever it is. And then we'd have to find some sort of intermediate point to get us, close. Because honestly, if we run at 11.5 or we run at 11.8 or 12.0, it's going to be good. Sorry with all the LT1 questions, but I'm wondering, man, if there's a better intake to use than the stock one. Yes, there are better intakes than the stock LT1 for better airflow and to gain more. That intake's actually pretty good for top end power, especially if you port it, because it has very short runners. I wonder if a Super Victor or something like that might be better. The only other LT1 intake that I've run, we ran the tune port manifold, a modified one from Jim over at TPIS on the L99, and then I've run the Lingenfelter box ram on the LT1, but it makes more low speed power because it has longer runners. I haven't run anything else to compare to the factory LT1 or LT4 version. Burning tire, we don't use the Holley to the, I don't normally use the Holley sensor to do the tuning. We have another Lambda sensor on the dyno that we use. Oh, this was in 1991. Yeah, back when we could all buy Fox Mustangs. This will be the last question because I've got to get going for tonight. Let's see. What change in horsepower have you seen from fuel temperature changes? That's a good question because that's one of the tests I want to do. I definitely want to do a fuel temperature change. And I kind of like to do it both carbureted and fuel injected. And I want to do it with more than just a cool can and a coil of copper tubing or whatever. I want to do it with a good size heat exchanger like an oil cooler and submerge it in a ice water bath probably to get the temperature down. And the thing is, I need that as close as I can get because it's under pressure too. And I need to get that as close as I can. And I'd like the fuel to be soaking in there and get as cold as we can. So that's why I like a big reservoir so that it gets immediately up to the engine. Because the thing is, if we make a run, we have to make sure that we get the cold fuel into, like if we're running a fuel injected one, the cold fuel has to get into the motor while we're making the run. So it has to be really close to the injectors. So that's always the problem is unless we make multiple runs and then we go, well, did it really do that? Did it not do that? The only way to do that would be maybe to take maybe I can drill and tap the fuel rail to take and put in a temperature probe and figure out when we get the actual cold fuel into the thing, because it's going to heat up fairly fast, especially if it goes into the rest of the motor is going to be fairly warm. And all of that stuff is aluminum. The fuel rails the rails are probably going to be aluminum. The rest of the tubing going to it, probably going to be steel, but the intake manifold is going to be aluminum and all that stuff, whatever fuel injection we happen to run, it's going to want to, shed all of that heat. It's going to want to take the cold and turn it into hot, and the hot turn it into, and they're going to merge in the middle and turn into warm. So we don't want that to happen. So I need to get the cold fuel to the setup as quickly as we can. You can do that pretty easily with the carbureted setup, but it's a little bit harder with the fuel injection. But I'll have to figure out a way to make that happen. And I want to get it as cold as I can. Like I'd like to get the fuel down to 30 or 40 degrees or something like that if we could, to see a big change. I want to see a big change in power. It'll be interesting again, like we did with the water meth, to see if when we do that, are we introducing more oxygen? Are we going to have to retune it? Are we going to have to add fuel? Are we going to have to take away fuel? What's going to have to happen? It will be very cool. Admiral Boost fixes everything. He's making 1,200 with like 30 pounds, which means he's making 400 NA. I would like to I'd like to get the NA version of the 3,800. I'd like to get that up near 300 horsepower if we can. And I think we can. I think with the right camshaft and ported heads and the right intake manifold, I think that that 300 horsepower out of that motor is certainly possible. And not making it too wild. It's not going to be a 8,000 RPM deal. I think given what we made already with the thing, and I think we ran that, and so we haven't even run a camshaft in that or anything. So I think that 400 or 300 horsepower NA is certainly doable. And then once we do that, putting the turbo on top of that and adding our multiplier with the boost on that, we start to see some fairly, big power numbers at some, fairly reasonable boost levels, especially because we're running like E85, if we start with that. And then especially if we're running ice water in our air-to-water intercooler. All of that helps with adding power to go above and beyond kind of the normal Holdner power boost formula. Thank you guys all for showing up, and hopefully you guys have all taken a look at the video on the water meth stuff. If you guys have any questions or suggestions, please make the comments and let me know what else I should be testing. The next water meth thing I think I want to do is I want to compare pump gas and water meth versus E85 to see if those two things actually are equivalent like everybody's saying. I also want to test some other side things like running just pure methanol. I kind of want to do that. Maybe just try E85 in there without actually having E85 as the base fuel, just 91, try stuff like that. It would be kind of cool. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you all. And if I don't see you tomorrow, if I don't do a live feed because it's Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Make sure, don't overindulge, but do make sure to eat lots of turkey and sit around and watch TV if that's your thing. Thank you guys for showing up. I'll see you all later.